Welcome to a quick look of Caligula Overdose, the Japanese version that just came out very recently. So if you don't know what Caligula is, I will tell you. It was a JRPG that came out exclusively on Vita in 2016 in Japan, and then got a localization last year. So I played through the localization last year. There's a playlist of me streaming it. You can check that out if you want to see the Vita version. But the new PS4 version's all sleek and shiny, and I like it. I've been playing it a lot the past couple of days, so I've got some save files that we can jump into later to see some of the cool new things they added to the game. And they added a bit. They added a couple new party members, a couple new dungeons, new bosses, and an entire, optional new route through the game, which is very interesting. I've been playing it on easy, which was a mistake because it's too easy in my opinion, so we'll start this new file off on normal. And now I get the opportunity to explain what the hell Caligula is actually about, because as there is now an anime adaptation, I've noticed that a common complaint is people don't understand what the hell is going on, but it can kind of be summed up in 2 sentences what the plot line is. And that is that Caligula takes place inside of a virtual world called Mobius, and most people that are stuck in Mobius have no idea that they're stuck there. They're completely oblivious to the fact that the world's fake, and you play as a protagonist as well as his teammates, his friends, who have the goal of getting out, of escaping the virtual world, which is governed by this character, Miu. So one of the big draws of Overdose is they have added a female main character that you can play as. So let's take her and enter her name. And now we kind of have a name for the main character, thanks to the anime as well. And it's gender neutral, pretty much. So, Skishima... Ritsu. Perfect. Yes, that is my name, Miu. Miu's telling me about how dope Mobius is. She's like, you're gonna love it. Thanks, Miu. Yeah, Mobius is great. So Miu's entire thing is that she governs Mobius, and she just wants to make everyone happy, but that's kind of at a cost. Would you want to be stuck in a virtual world against your will? I wouldn't. Alright, so the opening scene. Granted, the game does not do a great job of explaining this. I think even Atlus USA added stuff to make it more clear in the English version. There's our heroine. So what this is it's the graduation ceremony for the high school that we attend. We got our class representatives talking. And there's the one representing the 3rd year graduating students. Kensuke Hibiki. So then we get the white fade out. And what's not clear here is that there's a new banner on stage. And this is the entrance ceremony, a month later. Oh, now we get to come up on stage and talk about whatever. You can talk about your coming year, or you can welcome the new students or whatever. Talk about how all the fun you're going to have. But now, representing the incoming 1st year class, is somehow also Kensuke Hibiki. Straight up, we're gonna get to the problems with this game, and the animated scenes are not great. And they're new too. They're completely different from the Vita version, obviously, because they had to add ones for the female character. So I don't know if the same whoever FuRyu got to do this. I don't know if it's the same studio or anything. But they're still not very good. they're basically saying like, oh, she can see it. Because remember, most people are oblivious to the fact that things in Mobius are not what they should be, that it's not a real world. But you have that possibility of suddenly realizing it, of quote-unquote awakening and noticing the bullshit around you. Oh, time to get into the jank. Look how jank this is. Oh, it's a Mew concert. Look at these kids get hype. Fist pump. Everyone fist pump. That doesn't look great. And the problem is that some of this stuff that looks poor is because it was held over from the Vita version. But at the same time, like, this is a new engine. I don't know what the old one ran on, but this runs on Unreal 4. And it's not the exact same studio making it either. The first one was made by, I'm going to screw their name up, like Aquria, something like that. They're the same studio that made a couple of the Sword Art Online RPGs, which this game has some similarities to. But this version is made by a company called Historia, the Japanese, tiny Japanese studio, I would take it. But they have a little bit of experience with Unreal. So that's who FuRyu got to do this like halfway port / remake. Alright, Mew's like, yo, you can't leave Mobius. There's nothing beyond the station. Don't you like it here? Is there something you want? I can give you a boyfriend, maybe. And I'm like, oh, maybe. She's like, ah, whatever. And then Aria comes along. There's Aria. She's like, yo, Mew, I want to talk to you. And Mew's like, nah, fuck off. Now everyone's mad that we interrupted the concert. And we're going to get a really bad running animation right here. And we're going to get into our tutorial battle. Oh, this is great. So here's one of our party members, soon-to-be party members, Shogo. I love that they didn't change that he still headbutts the main character even though she's a girl. Alright, let's not worry about the story too much. I want to get it to a specific cutscene, which I think is going to happen now. Because I want to break down some of the things that are wrong with this game's presentation. As much as I like overhype Caligula, despite the fact that it's like super not great. Like, I can't shut up about it. If you follow me on Twitter, you know that I can't shut up about Caligula for whatever stupid reason. And I know it's not good. I'm not over here being like, check out this masterpiece franchise that no one's paying attention to. Oh no, Caligula is super stupid in poverty, but I love it for some reason. Alright, so this is us getting introduced to the rest of the Go Home Club. So all the kids have the ability to see the bullshit and realize that the world's fake and virtual. They don't really know what to do. They're like, well, we'll form a club. And we want to leave, but we don't know how to do it. So here's what's wrong with this game's presentation. First of all, the character models look terrible. Don't they? They look bad. They look really, really bad. Like, ugh. And it was more excusable in the Vita version, because it's like, oh, whatever, it's a handheld. I'm used to it. But when you port it over to PS4 with a new engine and everything, it's like, you can take the time to, like, create better character models? Or have anyone's mouth move? Or anything? And here's what's really wrong. Everything else looks pretty good, doesn't it? Well, not everything else. Like, I'm not talking about the in-game graphics. This game's user interface is completely overhauled from the Vita version, and it's actually good. I like the interface a whole hell of a lot, especially when we get to, like, open the main menu and all that stuff, as well as what things look like in combat. I like the portrait art a whole lot. It looks pretty good. So, what's wrong here is that both studios that developed the game straight up insist upon using these type of camera angles to show off the characters, despite the fact that the game's interface and like in-game portrait arts look great. So imagine, if you would, I would take it you are maybe familiar with Persona 3 and 4. think about what P3 and P4 look like from a presentation standpoint. You have older PS2 small models on screen, or Vita, you know, if you're playing Golden. And the story is mainly told through portrait art and text boxes, and you don't really get a good look at the character models except for in battle sometimes. But in cutscenes and dialogues, you don't really see what the character models' faces look like, because they don't want you to see those, because those are the part of the game that don't look that great. And it's actually why Persona 3 and 4 continue to hold up really well, despite how old they are. So if this game just didn't do this bullshit, it would look a lot better. Even Persona 5, getting a little bit newer, P5 still also doesn't do it too hard, except for in scenes where things are completely pre-rendered. So if you think in Persona 5 what all of the cutscenes look like when your party members awaken to their personas, what those cutscenes look like that are like super nice but they're in engine, those look really nice. But the regular scenes where it's just people standing around and talking like this don't look like that. And what usually happens is, this is a weird thing that a lot of people probably don't notice, but in Persona games, especially P5 where things are a bit like sleeker and newer and bigger, is that the camera angles are almost always full shot. You can almost always see every character in the shot from toe to head, their entire bodies. That's because the camera's typically pulled back really far so that you don't get too close and personal with the character models. Because quite honestly, even today, like P5's character models look fine for JRPG, but they're not like blow your ass out of the water incredible or anything. You would rather characters or players to focus on the character portraits and the dialogue boxes and let the story be told there, rather than up close with close-ups on, you know, kind of low polygon 3D models. But Caligula doesn't know that for some reason, and instead they kind of insist on crazy camera angles sometimes, focusing on people's faces, which is a huge mistake. Like this bullshit. Get out of there, what are you doing? So you see a lot of the flaws. Alright, I'm gonna get through this cutscene, because people are going to talk a lot, and then they're formulating their plan. So if you've seen any of the anime, you probably already know that, like, this didn't happen like it did in the anime. And the anime deviates a lot. It's kind of a lot different. And that's not a bad thing. I actually really, really like the anime so far, through 7 episodes as of today when I record this. We'll see how it finishes, but so far I like it a lot. And things in the game are obviously going to be a lot more linear. It's like a much more predictable pacing of, hey, here's a dungeon, go beat a bad guy. Here's another dungeon, go beat the bad guy, etc. Alright, so this is what the dungeons kind of look like. And they are improved over the Vita version, but they're still not great. So, for one, performance isn't so much of an issue anymore. Vita's performance was crazy bad. And there was always like a weird, like, filter vignette on the screen at all times in the Vita version that looked really, really terrible. That's gone, thank God. Okay, so some mechanics here. You notice that there are a lot of NPCs walking around. So this game has this weird system that a lot of people ignore called the causality link. And this is like a freaking network of every NPC in the game. They're all students, and they all have like little stories going on, and you can talk to them and have meaningless conversations, and you can try to fix their problems in their life. To be quite honest, I've never done it. I didn't do it in the English Vita version because it's too tedious. I still think it's kind of too tedious, but they did improve it a bit. What used to happen is that doing this, they have ranks. I think they go for the NPCs 1 to 5. And the rate at which you could rank up the NPCs via conversation was really slow. And instead now, you're almost always guaranteed to go up a rank when talking to them. So it's a bit easier, there's more incentive to do it. Right, I should do the things on the map. So what's going on in the story right now is we're trying to track down information on our first musician, Kagi P, who's apparently a student here at the school. The musicians are they're the bosses in the game. They are the supporters of Miu. They literally compose her songs. That's why they're called the Ostinato musicians. And they are pretty much the key to us finding a way out of Mobius. And if we want to try to track down Miu and find a way to get out, we're probably going to have to track down the musicians. So, another battle here. Thankfully, that time I got a jump. It's not quite clear, but when you have the advantage, you can sneak up on enemies and press X and do a little attack on them. And if you did it successfully, then when it says encounter on screen, it'll be like purple and black instead of white. So let's see how much trouble I have here. Probably not too much. So combat, I've heard that Transistor is a little bit like this. So it works kind of turn-based, but also timer-based. So right here I have my attack selected, and up at the top, this is a simulation, and you can see how like the timeline would work out. This is called the imaginary chain, I believe is what they called it in the English version. So I can kind of see how the battle will play out. And I have the ability to chain up to 3 attacks to this thing. So here's what my 3 attacks are going to probably look like. That's 1 down. So bars over the enemies, obviously they have their names. Sometimes the enemies you encounter are not like they're no names. They're, at least they were in the Vita version, they're just people who have completely lost their humanity or their soul or whatever. I think they're called lost souls in the English version. You have their level, which is LV1, and then the number inside the triangle is a mechanic called their risk. Enemies with high risk, you go risk 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then you risk break them. I risk broke that last enemy. And when that happens, it's kind of like they're wide open. They have like no defense at that point, and any attack does like, I don't know, double or triple damage or something like that. And when you get the jump, when you get the advantage on enemies, they start off with higher risk. I believe it's always risk 4. Right here they're explaining that sometimes normal people can also become enemies. The enemies are called Digiheads, which is a dumb name, but whatever. And the in-universe explanation is that Miu's song has like an adverse effect on people. So every dungeon has a particular song playing it. When you're walking around normally, that song is like an instrumental version. And when you enter battle, the lyrics kick in. And I really like this game's music, like a whole heck of a lot. I do own the original soundtrack to the original game. I own the anime's original soundtrack, which has like new arrangements of all the main songs. And they even packed in like a little mini soundtrack for Overdose if you pre-ordered it. But the problem with the game's music is that it gets really repetitive. And unfortunately, this being the first dungeon, Kagi P's song, which is called Peter Pan Syndrome, is not the strongest song in the game on the soundtrack. So I know like a lot of people kick up the game, at least the old Vita version, and it would take hours to get through this dungeon, and they had to hear that song on loop for hours, and it gets a bit tedious. So there are a lot of people that haven't heard the entire game that are like, the music in Caligula is grating, some people would say. And I don't agree with that. I actually think it's pretty good. It's just, unfortunately, it isn't handled very well. So if you'd like to hear a very good arrangement of this particular song, look up the anime version, which plays at the end of the first episode as well as the start of the second. It is easily the best version of it. Another advantage to Overdose is things are a bit more vocal. Characters talk a lot more, including the protagonists. And when you have a full party, they have like unique lines of dialogue for each other. So sometimes depending on like who you have in your active party, they have like cool conversations. Not like conversations, but like little tidbits and lines that they'll say to each other. So it's kind of fun to swap them out and see if you can't like hear new things, new people talking to each other in and out of battle. So speaking of voices, I would like to point out that the protagonist and voice actor for the guy, his name is Chiharu Sawashiro. And he's not a huge star or anything. I've looked into his behind the voice actor page. But the girl's voice actor is his older sister, Miyuki Sawashiro, who is a much bigger star and has had a lot of roles. I believe she's actually Elizabeth in Persona 3 as well. But I just thought it was really freaking cool that they got her to play the female protagonist, given that she's the male protagonist's older sister. Chess. They're explaining that. I think I already opened one, but sometimes there are locked chests that are dependent on defeating an enemy. So beating those guys let me open that thing up. A big negative I don't like about this game are save points. I don't think RPGs should have save points anymore. Not even inside dungeons. No more. Let me save anywhere, please. But this game has save points. And I could have sworn that the Vita version let you save anytime you wanted as long as you weren't inside of a dungeon. I could be wrong about that. I thought that was a thing. But this game, Overdose for sure, only save points. Even when you're not playing dungeons, you have to leave wherever you are and go find a save point somewhere. It's really stupid. It should be a thing that's in the system menu, but you only get load, configure, tutorial, exit. So some other things that are buried in here. There's Wire. So this is like your text messaging app. So these are the Go Home Club members, Shogo, Kotaro, Kotano, and one of these is Mifui and the other is Suzuna. But you can also see that I have a friend down here. That's the one NPC that I talk to. So you can add all the NPCs in here. You can have like 500 contacts. It's nuts. If that's what you want to do. Equipment is a weird system. It's not like armor pieces. If you've seen the Vita version, you know it's like they're stigmas. They're like weird psychological like problems. So I can't it's been a year since I played the Vita version, so I can't name any examples. But they're like weird psychological disorders and you equip them to you and they change your stats. This game gets really deep with like psychological problems. It really loves it. As it should, because if you didn't know the big catch line of like selling this game, it's that the characters in the scenario were written by Satomi Tadashi, who wrote Persona 1 and the Persona 2 duology. So there's some similarities in that respect. Alright, I'm going to load up one of my later save files so that we can go see some older stuff, some things that are a bit later in the game, but that means we'll be switching over to the male protagonists now. Alright, so here we are with Gai Ritsu, and this is just after having beaten the second dungeon. First two dungeons are the same as they are in the Vita version, but things start to get a little bit different. So we have some of the Go Home Club members hanging out here. And this is different. This is now there's a bit more downtime between playing dungeons rather than it being all linear. So my next main event is right here. And now we get to the other big selling point about Overdose. The big advertised thing to hook in people to buy the game again.
Ne.
So that is Thorn, the leader of the ostinato musicians, who you're familiar with if you've seen any of the anime, or if you've even beaten the first dungeon of this game. She's shown off rather quickly. So even though our friend Ritsu here has never met her until now, the player gets to see her in like a cutscene, and you know that she's the leader of the musicians. And one of the big draws of Overdose is that this scene happens, and you get to walk through this door and take her invitation to see what it's like on the other side. And you get to join the musicians. Alright, let's get to it. So this is their recording studio or something. A room that did not exist before Overdose, which is kind of ridiculous. I love that every little like pocket in this tiny room has a little like area designated for each musician. There's something that kind of says like, oh, this is their part of the room. Alright, let's see what we look like. So Mobius is like reconstructed your visual appearance as a musician. And Mew gives you the name Lucid. Oh yeah! So in the ostinato route, Mew's like, Aria's been doing this, so I've been wanting to try this out as well. So she goes into like little chibi mode, which is great. I love this art. But a musician needs a song. Every musician has their own song from Mew. So let's go over to the recording deck. This thing works on magic apparently, I don't know. I don't know what the context is of like whether or not Lucid actually writes it here himself, or if like it just happens automatically via magic. But this is his song. She loves it. Isn't that great? Super rad. I love it. Well, at this point, the game kind of continues, so I guess this is to clear up perhaps a misconception. It's a misconception that I had, which is that advertising for Overdose made it look like once you picked the ostinato route, like that was it. You were now a musician, like completely new game, right? But not actually, not quite. Instead, what happens is that you play the game normally. Oh, here's one of the two new party members. This is Eiji, I believe his name is. But instead what happens is that you still play the game normally. You still go through the regular route, but between dungeons, you will then reconvene and meet up with the musicians, with Thorn and Mew and all the other musicians you meet along the way. So you're kind of playing both sides of the field, if you know what I mean. And the Go Home Club has no idea about it, that you are secretly convening with the musicians. And the reason why Lucid's design is what it is because A, it completely hides his identity. And also it's gender neutral. So Lucid's design there was kind of a little masculine, but I assure you that it looks the same even if you choose the female main character. He still wears pants and whatnot. And actually, we didn't get a too good of a look at Lucid's design, but you may have noticed that he was completely missing a torso, and that's intentional. There's like no middle part of his character model. So he's kind of like a ghost, basically. He seems to not have any limbs. Even like on his shoes, you could see that they seem to kind of be floating next to his pants. They didn't have socks on or anything. There was no leg. And obviously the skull completely hides his face. So yeah, there might be times when you're playing as Lucid in between like major dungeons where maybe you run into the Go Home Club and they have no idea it's their president, that it's the main character. So I've seen some stuff. I've seen some streams when this game launched. I was watching some Japanese players go at it, and things get a little crazy towards the end if you choose to continue to play as Lucid. But of course, in that conversation with Thorn, you have the ability to just be like, nah, I'm not gonna listen to you. I'm not going through that door. And you can tell her to screw off and stay with the Go Home Club and just do things normally. Which I haven't done, obviously. In my files that are a bit later than this, I have, of course, been doing all the Lucid stuff, because once you open that stuff up, even the musician characters, you can party with them. They will become your party members when you're playing as Lucid, and they have character episodes of their own, which is really fascinating to me, and is like the driving force behind me wanting to see this game get localized. So you see that a lot of our party members here have character episodes that are ready for me. If you didn't know, the character episodes, in my opinion, are fantastic. They were what made the game, what actually made me like Caligula when I played through the English Vita version last year. They were a lot different and crazier, and they were just straight up pretty fun. They, if you haven't seen them, and they're doing a decent job in the anime of like kind of touching on the main points of those character episodes, even though they obviously can't copy them verbatim. But they're not exactly fun in terms of like happy hangouts with people, because every person that's in Mobius has a like common thread, and that is that they have some sort of like major trauma in their life. They have something that like caused them to be in Mobius. It's almost like Silent Hill in that way, that there has to be something wrong with you in order to end up here. So you see that Thorn even has her first character episode raring to go. So if you come back to the musician hangout, you have that ability to switch over to Lucid, and then I can re-enter the world as Lucid, and I can pop into the first dungeon here as Lucid, and we can see a little bit more of his character model. Ugh, this screen looks terrible. Every like dungeon has entrances that look like this, that have painted on backgrounds, which looked okay on Vita, not great, but on PS4 it looks really bad. And unfortunately, because this is like the exact opening moments of you getting Lucid, I don't have any musician buddies to help me out to party with me at this moment. See, you can see into his like body. Like that design, the flower is just like a floating logo. That's what he's supposed to look like. You can check out his art design here. Alright, so here we are in one of the two new dungeons for the game. This is the dungeon belonging to Stork, one of the two new musicians. It's got an interesting look. The buildings kind of don't look great. I don't know exactly what this place is. It's kind of like an indoor resort. It's kind of very traditional Japanese. It feels like something like Kyoto maybe. And you know what it reminds me of actually? It reminds me of a particular dungeon in Tokyo Mirage Sessions, if you played that. The the TV studio one. The water looks fucking great though. Like, that actually looks good. It looks out of place in this game. That's Unreal 4 powering that reflection. And I've played through this entire place before, and overall, it's okay. I do think it's a bit better than some of the dungeons that were in the Vita version, because like all the Vita version dungeons are straight lifted and identical to what they were. These girls are like, oh, Stork's so great. He's the frickin' coolest. Don't you love him? Yeah, Stork, woo. Stork apparently like writes love songs, and his song's pretty good actually. I like it a lot. I like it more than the other new musician's song. So one of the big draws of this dungeon is that it has a hot spring. So beyond this little part of the floor is your typical like JRPG tropey hot spring scene, which they have added for this version, and I'm not gonna do it. Gotta save something, no spoilers. But I will let you know that it has anime in it, like literally. They actually added some anime scenes into the main scenario, which has been pretty cool. Better than nothing. Alright, let's fast forward some more into the next new dungeon. Alright, new dungeon number 2. And to my right is Ayana, one of the 2 new party members for the game. So this place is kind of like I think it's like an Aztec pyramid or something. I'm not gonna lie, not a huge fan. I feel like this one's a lot weaker than Stork's dungeon. Obviously, I got stronger enemies to deal with. Because I'm on easy, this is like crazy easy. Oh, right. And also new to Overdose is down at the bottom right. See that I'm hitting options there. That's an auto battle feature that works on your party members. So it gets a bit tedious controlling all the party members when you're selecting like 3 attacks each. So that like in the Vita version, that could be 12 moves that you have to select before the battle even starts. So this auto battle feature now lets you put your other party members to select automatically. To be quite honest, it saves a lot of time and I prefer it. That said, the AI on the party members is not great. Typically because we saw in the first dungeon an enemy put up a shield and go into guard mode. The AI doesn't know how to deal with that apparently. They will just attack, and if a digihead is going to put up a guard, they like won't acknowledge it. The party member's AI, like they're not taking account what's going to happen the way you can by looking at the imaginary chain. So sometimes it's just a waste. So that's why you always got to be aware of it as the controlling the main character about whether or not an enemy's going to guard. Okay, and now we are all the way as far as we can go. This is literally my most recent save. This is about 70% through the game, no big deal, no big doochie. So you see that I've got some of the musicians added into the little recording studio here. Here's Stork, and here's Kushinashi, I believe her name is, the other new musician. I would like to talk to Stork, but I can't do it without doing one of his character episodes. Oh, and here's Mew. She hangs out over this table. Let's go do a little bit of fighting with them. Alright, now I've got a party full of musicians. Let's go find something to fight. Oh, enemies here are super weak. So you see that they get their own weapons. They're pretty similar to the Go Home Club's weapons. They kind of correspond where there's always like a matching weapon type with someone else. I don't really remember them having weapons that were quite as similar in the Vita version, though I could be wrong. I thought that was something that was new that got added to this as well as the anime. But I might be wrong. Let's take a look at their status screens. There's Stork. He is a super weirdo. I like him a lot. Let's get into another battle. So I wish I could move the camera around in this position, but I really can't. The best I can do is zoom it out like this by selecting an attack. But this game's battle, like the way it conducts battles is super creative, and I actually like it a lot. The Vita version had a massive problem where battles would always take place right wherever you started them. It wouldn't load out to a different screen or anything. They happened in the overworld. And ambitious, but that created tons of issues where, for one, the camera was free roaming, so you could move it around with the right stick, and it would just sometimes clip through walls and things just looked terrible. Battles would happen in places where they didn't make sense because the passages were just too narrow, and then sometimes you would have like NPCs just walk into the middle of your fight and not do anything. It looked terrible. It was awful. So bad. So the biggest improvement here is this like pseudo battle arena that starts up anytime you engage an enemy, and it's a big circular area that's actually, as you can see at the edges, clipping into buildings. So it's kind of like almost a virtual fighting ground or something, which maybe in any other context would look really stupid and not make any sense, but given the game's setting of being in a virtual world, it kind of gets away with it. And overall, I think it's really freaking cool. It's easily the best part of the game. Now, problems with NPCs walking into your fights don't happen, though other enemies can still join your fights, and that's actually a mechanic. So if there's like an enemy outside the bubble that just happens to have their pathing entering the arena, they will come in and it'll say enemy join, and now all of a sudden you got an extra opponent to deal with. But another downside here is that, like, you can see into these buildings to the left and right. Now, you can never enter those buildings, so the fact that they even bothered to put furniture in them to kind of make them look real is kind of cool. And most of the time, that's fine. Anytime a dungeon is a single floor, that looks totally fine. It's kind of weird, but I like it. It's creative and cool. However, this looks not so good if you're fighting in a dungeon that has multiple floors to it, if there are stairs and layers upon it. And sadly, this applies to the first dungeon inside the school. So what I have seen, I haven't seen it in my game yet, but I saw it in some streams, is that sometimes you can see what's going on floors above or below you, depending on which one you're standing on. So if you're on the second floor of the school, you can see above and below. And what can happen is that a character model on a floor above you can like walk in such a place to where it's like overlapping with the battle, and it looks like it's super close to the camera, because it is, but it's not on the same plane as all your characters and where the battle's taking place. It's a floor above you, but you can still see it for some reason. It looks really stupid, so that's something that I think should be fixed. Okay, back with the Go Home Club, and you can see that I've been leveling up everyone pretty evenly. We're all in the low 40s, which is a little bit overleveled for this point in the game, but that's totally fine. And one of the reasons why I'm overleveled is because it's really easy to do so. After you clear out the first dungeon in the school, parts of it that you couldn't see before become accessible, and they house much stronger enemies, so you can use that as a bit of a training ground, and you can kind of overlevel for the next several dungeons in the game and just shoot straight through them. And of course, once you're overleveled, the likelihood that enemies engage you goes way down. Also, defeating enemies at a higher level is not nearly as hard in this version as it was in the Vita version. The Vita version had like two really bad sins in the way they placed enemies. One was that defeating higher level enemies was A, really hard, and B, they had this really nasty habit of shoving in enemies that had absurdly high levels into dungeons that had the sole purpose of protecting rare items. So you'd be at like, I don't know, level 20 or so, and then you turn the corner and all of a sudden there's like a level 75 enemy that's protecting a chest. And it's like, what the hell? I have no chance. I can't beat that thing. Well, that was the game's way of telling you, like, well, maybe you should come back later when you can. But it didn't really work great, and it was really kind of too easy to accidentally find yourself in that kind of predicament where you had to fight that enemy, because you're just like turning the corner and then you're like, oh, whoops, I didn't mean to fight this thing, and now I'm dead. So they got rid of that in Overdose. I've seen some high-level enemies, but they're always defeatable. In fact, in the, granted I'm playing on easy and I don't know how much of a difference that makes, but I've been able to beat some enemies that are in the 90s in terms of level, and I was like, I don't know, 30 at the time. Granted, you know, a full party of 30, and I needed the advantage. I needed to get the jump on them so that I could get them at risk level 4 to start off. But it was doable. I could do it as long as it was 4-on-1 against an enemy that high. So you'll see right here, taking on, we're all in the low 40s, so we got a 40 and a 50 here. This is no problem. Alright, so most of my party is going to focus on the 51 because that's where they're pointing. So I'm going to deal with the 41. Oh, they're going to put up a guard immediately. So let's break this. Let's see if I can... Whoops. Now let's move it all the way over. Let's see if my one attack is going to be enough to kill it. Yeah. The guard break will risk break that enemy, and then I can kill it in one. So my final chain is going to be this attack up here. This is another new mechanic to Overdose. So if you look at the right side of the screen, we have like glowing bars underneath our HP and our SP. This is completely new. It's called Stress. And what it does is that it slowly fills up over time over like the battles you fight. And I think when you fight higher level enemies than you, it goes up quicker. And when it maxes out, you can use this attack at the top, which is like kind of like an ultimate. I was confusing these for like the ultimate attacks that were in the Vita version. Like I thought they replaced them, but no, they're completely new. So down here is the old ultimate from the Vita version, which I used to spam a bunch in that version of the game. But now there are these ones that have like cool animations attached to them. So I'm going to use this to wipe out the other enemy, assuming my party members don't get to him first. Let's go. It's going to be close. There we go.
Aria,
and that's Caligula Overdose. That's a decent look at the game, right? So again, things here are still kind of not great. I'm not going to pretend that this is like a masterpiece that I'm waiting to get localized. It's still really jank and really poverty in some areas. It's not quite what I honestly wanted. I had higher hopes for it when it got announced in November. That said, it is still a remarkable improvement over that Vita game. And it does a better job of like living up to what I like about Caligula, which is really more like concept than actual execution. I've always liked Caligula for its ideas and its art and its music and its character writing and all of that stuff. I just think the aesthetic's cool. I think having Satomi Tadashi is really cool. And I think the writing that he clearly did for the character episodes, I could tell he wrote them, was really, really fun in the Vita version. And just overall, I like it a lot. This is weird to say, but I kind of feel like Caligula looks and like feels a lot like what would happen if I got to make my own JRPG. Just like the overall like direction of the art and kind of like the idea for the story and the characters. It resonates with me for some stupid reason, even though unfortunately the two games that have been made for it aren't that great. These are, I don't know, the Vita version's, I don't know, like a 6 out of 10, and this is maybe a 7.5. It's not up to snuff with like the leading JRPGs right now. It's not Persona 5. It's not a Kiseki game. It's not Ys or Tales of or anything that's kind of like leading the genre right now. It's clearly kind of behind that. And what's weird is that I think the anime is the best thing to come out of it. If you have not seen the anime, I'm not going to pretend that I'm an expert on what makes great anime, because to be quite honest, I don't watch a whole lot of anime. Some people think I do, but I don't. I don't keep up with seasonal anime. So I've seen a lot of mixed reviews on the Caligula anime. Like, some people like it, some people don't. Some people think it's really cool, other people think it's like confusing and dumb. I like it. That's all I'm going to say is I like it. Give it a try. Give it like a couple of episodes, a few episodes. And granted, it has its peaks and valleys. Like, I thought episodes 4 and 5 were a little weak. Episode 6 turned out to be fantastic. And now I'm like super, again, like along for the rest of the ride. And am really looking forward to how they handle some of the things that I know will be completely different from the game, because they've written a backstory for the main character, and it's different. It's not 100% adapted from the game, and that's a good thing, because it's helping the actual storytelling a lot. So hopefully it ends up finishing strong, because they only have 12 episodes. It's not 2 seasons. It's just this spring, 12 episodes. So hopefully it ends up being pretty darn solid. I've liked it so far. And the weird thing is that the quality of the anime and the games are such that it almost feels like the game is adapted from the anime, in the sense of like the quality. Because usually what happens is like, game gets mediocre anime, or good anime gets mediocre game because it's just a licensed game that's coming out, So it's weird that for Caligula, I think it's reversed. I really think that the anime is better than the game. And in fact, I don't know where in the hell, what video it would be in, but I'm pretty sure at some point late in streaming the original version, and once I was beginning to get to like the heaviest scenes in the character episodes in the later dungeons, I was like, holy shit, this game should have just been a visual novel or something, because all the game parts were really mediocre, but all the like story bits and character bits were really, really fun. And in some senses, it's kind of almost science adventure-y. It kind of feels like a VN to some extent. And that's why, despite all of its really dumb flaws, I still like Caligula for some reason. And I don't know, I'm a fan, I guess. I'm the only one I know. Literally the only Western fan that I know is me. I've been on since day one when it got announced for Japan on Vita, and I'm still along for the ride. So right now there's no localization plans for this game officially. Obviously Atlus USA localized the Vita version last year, and I can't imagine it sold very well, because they really didn't advertise it. And I imagine they didn't because they knew it wasn't very good. They knew that the game wasn't very good, and if I may say, their localization effort wasn't that great either. I did poke around in the Vita version recently, just like the first hour or so, and I was like, whoa, some of this like writing for English still isn't very good. I can tell it wasn't their A effort. So whether or not Overdose comes over, really shaky. I don't know if they would still get those rights, if it'd still be Atlus USA, if they would like have rights to any like re-release. Maybe not. Maybe it would go to someone else. Like, I know Arc System Works announced that they're doing it in Korean. Oddly enough, yeah, Korean. So it's kind of like, well, FuRyu's now licensing the game to be localized in other languages. So English, maybe? Hopefully? I hope it comes over, because I really want to see all the Ostinato character episodes in English. I want to see the new ending in English. There's at least one new ending. I've seen 2 endings for this game from watching streamers, and neither of them were what I saw in the Vita version. One of them was clearly the Ostinato ending. I saw it. Another one was kind of similar, but going the other way towards the Go Home Club, but wasn't as cheerful as the ending that I saw originally in the Vita version. So that makes me think that there's probably like a better true ending beyond that. So I'm guessing there are at least 3 endings, but I don't know yet. I suppose I will find out in the coming days as I continue to play. I'm actually getting really close to beating the ostinato route for myself. And I'll see if it's exactly as I saw on stream, or possibly if things change. I know that FuRyu advertised that there is a unique condition in which you can play with both Go Home Club and musician members in like either a post game or a new game plus or something. They advertised that like just before the game came out, and they put out screenshots of it, of like the main character having a party with a mixture of both sides. And apparently they have unique voice dialogue that like where they talk to each other. They have actual unique lines that you wouldn't be able to hear otherwise of them interacting with one another. I'm like, what the hell is that? How does that work out? And I don't know a lot about it yet. Like the wording they use was like, it's to meet the conditions for it. Like they're very specific or something like that. In order to unlock this, you have to meet very specific conditions. And I'm like, what does that mean? I don't know. I'm going to take a guess and say maybe max out every character episode for both parties? Maybe? I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out. So I will be playing over the next several days to a week. And if I find anything really cool, I'll probably like post it in the comments or something. God, I hope this game comes over. Why do I like this trash? I don't know. Bye for now, Caligula. And hopefully we'll get to see you again in the future, because if it comes out in English, I'm doing the full game on the channel. Guarantee it. That's a promise. Mark it down. See you guys later.